Okay guys, welcome to Demon Performance, and today we're going to go over how to adjust the tappet clearances on the Royal Enfield the easy way. We are going to do it without removing the tank. The tank has to be loosened and just move back a little bit, blocked up, and don't have to remove the horns, don't have to remove that sensor unit under the tank, you don't have to disconnect any hoses or electrical connections. And it's a really fairly easy way to do this. So, without any further ado, let's take a walk outside and we'll get started. Okay, here we are outside looking at the bike. And the first thing I want to show you is you don't have to take the tank off to do this job. Now, if you're just going to check the clearances and you have a reasonable expectation that they're going to be okay, then this is a really easy way to do it. If you're going to adjust them, then you can still adjust them this way. It's a little bit more fiddling around, but you don't have to take the tank off, you don't have to remove the horns or the other sensor unit underneath the frame. It can be done this way, and it's an old school way of doing it. And I'll show you what we did first. Going around on the other side of the bike, I just used a simple piece of 1/4-inch plywood, blocked the tank up, slid it back a little bit, blocked it up, being careful not to stretch any of the wires or hoses. And the next thing is to take off these small bolts. Be careful because there's a seal underneath them. They have an orientation, so take them off and save them and keep the orientation of the washers so you can put them back on in the correct way. And then we'll continue on. We're going to end up just sliding the cover one way or the other. The other thing is, I'm going to use the correct tool and take off this cover and use a wrench to turn the engine over. You don't have to do that. I happen to have the tool, so I'm going to use it. If you don't have the tool, you can just spin the back wheel in the direction that the motorcycle travels, and you can get top dead center that way. It's not a problem. You don't need a special tool. Okay, so now I'll continue. Okay, now you can see I've taken the valve cover off and exposed the tappet adjusters. Look very closely, you can see them there. Now, if you're just going to check them and you don't have to adjust them, this is all you need to do. You can slide that cover right out of the way. That's a little difficult. You got to squeeze a couple of the hoses up, but you can get it past there. Make sure you get the gasket down inside around the cylinder head so you don't damage the gasket when you're trying to maneuver the valve cover off of the top. You don't want to cut that gasket, okay? So make sure that's out of the way. You need to take it off here if you're going to use these marks. Right there, these are the marks we use. I'm going to do this in segments because I'm working alone and I don't have a tripod that's big enough to record this, so we'll just do this in spurts. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen these up and then I'll come back. Okay, so these are, if you're going to take off this excess cover here and turn the crank with a wrench, then these are the kind of tools you need. This is a 14 millimeter, I believe. Is that right? Let me take a look here. Can't read it. 14 millimeter hex. Not a normal size for a hex set. I happen to have a set of extensions 1/2-inch drive that I use. So we'll put that in there. And I'll try to do this with one hand. Should be fairly loose, so we can take this out. Take that out. And merely spin this out. Make sure the gasket's there and save that. Now, inside there is a 17 millimeter bolt, which I guess you can't see, but there was some controversy a while ago on the internet. Another vlogger was attempting to make sense out of the workshop manual, which has an incorrect instruction. But when you put this in here, you need to turn this anti-clockwise. Anti-clockwise. Now I haven't taken the spark plugs out yet, so I'm not going to actually turn it, but that's how you turn the crank. Anti-clockwise is counterintuitive because you would think you would loosen the thread on the nut. It is not a left-handed threaded nut, but it's on there so tight you're not going to jar it loose, especially when you take the spark plugs out and you have no compression on the cylinders. You're able to turn the motor over quite safely. Don't follow the workshop manual, it's incorrect. Okay, so now, give me a second, I'll get the spark plugs out and then we'll go on to the next step. I've checked my tappets now, and the back ones were okay. The exhaust over here, they seem to be a little tight, so I'm going to have to adjust those. But just going to show you here, since there's not enough clearance, we didn't take off all this stuff and didn't move all these things out of the way, how you do this. So you take a 10mm box end wrench, and you can take a little screwdriver, and you can simply loosen this, but if you want to support this, you can put the screwdriver in sideways, and then after you do that, you can take the wrench and loosen the copper colored nut. Same thing when it goes to tighten. There's not a lot of tension on this screw here. You just need to hold it in place while you tighten this nut right here. So you can put the wrench on here and simply with two hands, I'm using one, put a thin blade of screwdriver in there sideways and brace that little adjusting screw and tighten or loosen the nut. So it's very simple to do it that way. It's not rocket science. You don't need to have a screwdriver in vertically or a special tool. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and adjust the front ones now, and we'll see how that goes. Maybe I can set this up so you can see it. I want to put this camera right there, and we'll see what we can do. Alright, so I'll put this on here like this. And I'm trying to do this so I don't get my hands in the way of the camera. That's kind of the pain in the butt. Put that in there like that, and then just loosen that up a little bit. Okay, now we've got that loosened. You can turn this with your fingers a little bit. Get this in here. So we're looking for about 8 thousandths. Somewhere between 7 and 8 thousandths. If we're using millimeters, it'd be what, 0.18 millimeters. So this is 7 thousandths, a little bit under. And it's not going in there. Oh, there it goes. Now we're in there, and it's too loose. So now we can just tighten that down until you feel like it's just dragging slightly. Okay, now it's just dragging slightly. Usually a little looser is better because I'll show you why. When you go to tighten this up, it'll tend to shrink your measurement a little bit. So put that wrench on there, get the screwdriver in there, hold that setting as best we can. There we go, now we got it snugged up. And get it back in there like that. And do it again. Tighten it up. Now we'll check it. Where are we? Okay. So try that right there. And that's a little loose now. It's in there too. See how it's no drag. You want a little bit of drag on that. So I'm going to try this. See if that works. That doesn't work, I'm going to have to redo it. So this is it. Trial and error, folks. That's still just a little loose, so we're going to try that again. Okay, very simple there. You can get the hang of it. It's a trial and error kind of a thing. It's still a little loose. Try that. Tight. Pretty good. I would like a little tighter than that. I'm kind of a perfectionist, but that would be good enough. There's no chuck on there. You feel a little bit of drag on there. So we're going to call that good. Okay, so now you've seen me do one, and doing 8 is exactly the same thing repeated 2 times. Now, in order to do the right side, I'm going to put the wrench back on here. Turn it 1 complete turn anti-clockwise until you can see that thing. There's 2 slash marks. Right now we have the left side lined up with this little line here in the cylinder head, and there's a slash mark with a little R. That's for the right side. You turn it 1 full turn, that will bring that line up to there, and then you go on the other side, bring the valve cover back over this way, and adjust that side. The rest is simply buttoning up. I'll shoot a little shot of trying to put the gasket back on, but that's pretty much like a monkey trying to wrestle with a football. You got to just make sure you get the gasket in the top. You got to make sure it seats down in here well. You might have to put you could put a little silicone sealant on here if you wanted, or maybe some sticky grease to hold the gasket up into the channel on the valve cover. But whatever works, but you have to before you torque down those 4 bolts, make sure that this is well seated, properly seated. You don't want to pinch it or get it crossed up in there, because then you'll have a leak. That's about it. I'll shoot another segment when we're all done. Okay, this is just going to be a quick wrap-up. Got the thing all back together. I adjusted the other valves in a similar fashion just by moving the cover back and forth. You can slide it this side and slide it to that side and do the valve adjustment. The valve adjustment is very simple, very easy, just a little time consuming, trial and error. Takes a few minutes to do that. Now I've got the valve cover in place, ready to tighten down. Very difficult. The most difficult time I had was getting that gasket lined up. It's not technically difficult, it's just a lot of fiddling around. And I found the best way to do it was to start on the right side of the bike, get everything lined up, get it setting in place with the gasket in place in the valve cover resting on the cylinder head, and then coming around to this side and kind of working it in from that side to this side. It took a couple back and forths to get it lined up, but once you get it close, you can wiggle it around and it'll plop down, and you can tell that it's seated and it doesn't rock back and forth. Best thing to do though is take a trusty flashlight, check, make sure it's lined up everywhere, all the way around the perimeter, so that you don't pinch that rubber. So that's pretty much the job. Spark plugs are back in. I'll button this thing back up and start her up. As it was, there was only a couple of the valves adjusters that needed adjusting, and they were on the exhaust side on the left side. The ones on the right side were perfect just the way they were. The left side needed a little adjustment on, I think, 3 of them. But so that's it. No need to take your tank off and disconnect all that crap, the horns and all that other stuff. It's relatively simple to do. A couple of tricks I showed you with the screwdriver sideways should make it an easy job for you. Okay, that's all for now, and I'll see you on the next vlog.